My friends, tonight we gather to face a simple yet life-changing truth. Money buys freedom, but poverty buys slavery. Picture yourself standing at a crossroads. On one path, the shackles fall away and you stride forward with purpose. On the other, invisible chains pull you back, each day heavier than the last. Have you ever felt the weight of worry? Bills stacking up like walls, dreams slipping through your fingers as each dawn brings fresh burdens. That's the slavery of scarcity, and it grips not only your pocketbook, but your very spirit. Yet there is another way, a way where resources become wings, where prudent choices unlock doors to opportunity and peace of mind. So tonight, as we lean in together, I invite you to open your hearts to the promise before us. Let us recognize the power at our disposal and refuse to be bound by lack. This is only the beginning of our journey toward true freedom, freedom to live boldly, to love generously, to fulfill the calling that stirs within every one of us. My friends, imagine standing at the edge of two worlds, each stretching out before you like a vast plain under an endless sky. On one side, sunlight breaks through the clouds, illuminating a field where every step forward feels lighter, every burden lifted by unseen hands. On the other, shadows cling to your heels, tightening their grip with every heartbeat, whispering that there is no escape, no breath of air without cost. This is the sharp divide we must confront. Money buys freedom, but poverty buys slavery. It is not merely a matter of finances. It is the condition of the soul, the measure of our hope, and the truth of our daily walk. Think of the mother who rises before dawn, her bones weary from another night spent tossing and turning, mind spinning through a ledger of debts, deadlines, and dwindling hope. She carries within her a fierce love for her children, yet the weight of scarcity presses down like iron chains. Each dollar she earns is fought for with blood and tears, yet still it slips away. Rent, utilities, groceries, the little emergencies that crow like vultures at the gates of her peace. In that crucible of lack, she learns a harsh lesson. Poverty is not just a lack of wealth. It is a relentless taskmaster that robs her of rest, certainty, and often of her very joy. Contrast her plight with the man who has known the ease that comes when resources flow. He rises with confidence, not arrogance, but with the quiet assurance that his labors yield fruit that can be shared or sown back into richer soil. He pays his bills without fear, lays aside savings without strain, and even in the face of storms, medical emergencies, sudden repairs, he finds within his means the capacity to stand firm. Freedom, real freedom, is not just the absence of debt. It is the power to choose, to respond rather than react, to give rather than scramble, to live with a generosity of heart that mirrors the vastness of his provision. I have walked with people on both sides of this divide. I have seen the sparkle in the eye of a young graduate just stepping into her career, pockets padded with possibility, dreams waiting to be chased with reckless abandon. She speaks of vision boards and business plans, knowing that each dollar invested in her education is a deposit in the bank of her future. For her, money is oxygen, life, blood that fuels aspiration, unlocking doors that once seemed bolted shut by circumstance. She is free to dream, free to risk, free to rise. Yet I have also knelt by the bedside of an elderly man who watched his savings dwindle to nothing as illness stole his vigor. He clutched the handrail of his past successes, pension, investments, possessions, and found them cold and hollow against the relentless advance of cost. His voice was gentle, but in his silence echoed the despair of one who once felt secure, now made vulnerable by the true master, unrelenting need. Poverty, he learned too late, does not simply lack, it demands. It calls you at midnight with bills and demands that you answer with coin you no longer hold. It steals your dignity even as it bankrupts your heart. But this contrast is not meant to condemn or blame. It is meant to awaken us, for we live in a world where the chains of poverty can be broken, where the doors of freedom can be flung wide open if we will walk through them with courage and wisdom. We cannot pretend that money is the root of all evil, for in its noble use it becomes the very tool of liberation. It is not the dollar itself, but the spirit in which we wield it that defines its moral weight. When money buys freedom, it is invested in health, education, opportunity, and the capacity to love without reservation. Consider the streets of a small town where a new factory opens its doors, bringing wages that lift families from the brink. Parents no longer skip meals so their children can eat, and for the first time their children attend school without fear of half-finished homework and empty stomachs. A community blooms where once only anxiety grew. Spirits soar where once only struggle reigned. That is the face of freedom bought with honest labor, work that honors the hands that perform it, and wages that honor the worth of the worker. Yet let us not ignore the subtle ways poverty enslaves even those who hold fragile wealth. The entrepreneur who rises early and sleeps late, consumed by the fear of failure, finds his soul in bondage to a relentless pursuit. He sacrifices Sabbath rest for spreadsheets, relationships for revenue, and learns that even freedom on the surface can mask a deeper chain if ambition becomes Lord. Thus, freedom is not merely the abundance of resources, but the right orientation of the heart, knowing when to pursue gain and when to lay down our burdens and simply be. Imagine the artist, penniless but rich in spirit, who finds herself loved and supported by patrons moved by the beauty of her gift. Though she lives on the edge of society's ledger, she tastes a freedom money alone cannot buy, the freedom of calling forth beauty from nothing, of shaping hope out of clay, of offering her soul to a world desperate for light. This is the paradox. Poverty can spur creativity, but only if the mind remains free from the crushing weight of fear. When fear takes the reins, brilliance withers. When it is set aside, the human spirit soars. And so we see that freedom and slavery are not only about the number in our bank account, but the state of our hearts. Money, rightly earned and wisely used, becomes the chariot of liberty. It carries us to new heights of service, to new depths of devotion, to a generosity that transforms communities. Poverty, on the other hand, shackles our vision, narrows our compassion, and silences our song. It tells us that tomorrow holds nothing but more of today's deprivation, and in that lie we lose our hope. Have you ever noticed how a single act of generosity can break the rhythm of poverty's song? A scholarship awarded to a gifted student who would otherwise toil in obscurity. A loan given without heavy interest, sparking a small business that becomes the heartbeat of a neighborhood. A gift of time, teaching skills long withheld, unlocking hidden talents that shine like beacons in a darkened world. In each of these moments, money is not hoarded but released, and in that release we discover the truest form of freedom, the power to give what we have been given. My friends, this great chasm between freedom and slavery calls us to choose, to decide what mastery we will serve. Will we bow to the God of scarcity, who promises protection but delivers only anxiety? Or will we embrace the stewardship of abundance, trusting that every resource at our disposal is but a down payment on the divine invitation to live freely, to love generously, and to invest ourselves in the flourishing of all? Let us then walk boldly into the possibility that money, when held loosely in open hands, becomes a mighty instrument of liberation. Let us see poverty not as an immutable sentence, but as a call to compassion and creativity. For in the dialectic of wealth and want, we find a mirror of our deepest longings, longings to be more than mere survival machines, to be architects of hope, builders of bridges, bearers of light. May we never forget that the path to freedom runs through the marketplace of our choices, and each transaction, each act of giving or withholding, charts the course of our souls. My friends, we cannot stand idly by while the very ground beneath our feet shifts with the tremors of economic struggle. Tonight, I want you to feel the urgency of this moment coursing through your veins, pulsing like the heartbeat of a world on the brink of transformation. Imagine for a moment the calendar on your wall, each day flipping over with astonishing speed, carrying us ever closer to choices we cannot postpone. The clock is ticking, and every second that passes without action tightens the grip of uncertainty on countless lives. It is in this fleeting heartbeat of history that we must awaken our resolve and summon the courage to embrace the truth. We stand at a crossroads where our decisions today will echo through the corridors of tomorrow. Have you ever paused at midnight, listening to the hollow silence of an empty wallet, feeling the chill of doubt seep into your bones? That doubt is not simply a fleeting thought. It is a call to arms, a siren wail urging us to confront the precariousness of existence when financial freedom remains out of reach. For too many, the morning light brings no comfort, only the dread of bills unpaid, of mouths unfed, of dreams deferred. This is not the distant suffering of some nameless other. It is happening next door, across our streets, within our own families. We hear the gasps of those gasping for air under the rubble of debt, and their cries compel us. Act now, act wisely, act together. Let me tell you of a city where industry once thrived, where the factory whistles marked the rhythm of life, and where every paycheck carried with it the promise of stability. Then the tides of change swept in machinery silenced, jobs vanished, neighborhoods hollowed out. In the rubble of empty storefronts, I saw more than derelict buildings. I saw the lost potential of hundreds of souls whose only crime was trusting that yesterday's prosperity would last forever. They learned, with bitter clarity, that freedom is fragile and can be stripped away in a single downturn. They learned that poverty does not wait politely for attention. It pounds on the door, demanding immediate response. But this urgency is not born merely of fear. It is born on the wings of opportunity. When we recognize that every moment delayed is another moment lost, we are propelled into action. There is power in speed, the power to seize innovation before the moment slips, to lift a neighbor from despair before hopelessness calcifies in the heart, to rebuild a community before its foundation crumbles beyond repair. Picture the entrepreneur who spots a gap in the market and moves swiftly to fill it, creating jobs where there was none, infusing his town with new purpose. That rapid spark of initiative does more than enrich a single individual. It ignites a beacon of hope that illuminates the possibilities for all. Consider the parent who, after years of scraping by, finally grasps the significance of investing not just in a child's education, but in herself, worth, and identity. She signs the tuition check not as an afterthought, but as a deliberate claim on a brighter future. In that moment, urgency transforms from frantic panic into focused strategy. She does not wait until graduation looms like a cliff. She builds a bridge brick by brick, teaching her child that time is an ally when we honor it with intentional stewardship. Yet the sands of time reveal harsh truths. Procrastination magnifies poverty's power. A single missed opportunity to save, invest, or learn a new skill can spiral into years of regret. I've sat with young men and women who look back on moments when they could have embraced mentorship, pursued a scholarship, or started a small side venture, and chose instead the comfort of inertia. They speak with gentle sorrow of what might have been, their voices trembling with the weight of lost potential. Let us not be so tempted by ease that we sacrifice the urgency of our calling. Every generation faces its own urgencies. In the era of digital revolution, we cannot afford to be spectators. As industries evolve at breakneck speed, so too must our strategies for liberation. The person who delays adapting to new technologies, new markets, new modes of collaboration risks being left behind, shackled by outdated tools and mindsets. But those who seize the moment, who invest time today in mastering tomorrow's platforms, will find doors swinging open, corridors of advancement laid bare. This is the clarion call. Delay no more, for the future does not wait. I recall the story of a small farming community beset by drought and declining yields. Crops failed, incomes dwindled, and despair took root. Then one young farmer, refusing to watch his heritage slip away, sought out modern irrigation techniques, shared his findings freely with neighbors, and ignited a movement of renewal. In a single season, the land blossomed anew, and with it, the spirits of an entire region. That breakthrough did not come from lofty declarations, but from a sense of pressing urgency, and now or never, impulse that turned desperation into determination, scarcity into plenty. And so we see that urgency need not be frantic or fear-driven alone. It can be the pulse of purposeful passion. It sharpens our vision, focusing our minds on the possibilities before us rather than the limitations behind us. It aligns our hearts with a mission greater than mere survival, transforming every decision into a step along the path of meaning. When urgency anchors itself in clarity of purpose, it becomes a force for good, compelling us to invest wisely, to innovate boldly, and to serve generously. There is, however, a caution woven into urgency's call. We must guard against the false prophet of haste. Not all movement is progress, and not every frantic sprint leads us closer to true freedom. We must balance urgency with discernment, marrying speed with wisdom. It is better to take one deliberate, well-informed step than 100 reckless leaps that lead us astray. Yet let us also beware of paralysis by analysis, the tendency to overthink until the moment passes. The stakes are too high for either folly or indecision. Imagine the teacher who recognizes that her students face not only academic challenges, but the looming specter of economic marginalization. She could console herself that curriculum standards must be met first, that reform lies in policy, that change will come someday, but she chooses instead an urgent intervention, extra tutoring sessions, financial literacy workshops, mentorship programs. In doing so, she interrupts a cycle of disadvantage and offers a new narrative, one where opportunity is not postponed, but pursued with intention today. That is the kind of urgency that reshapes destinies. Reflect for a moment on the stories of individuals who stood at the cliff's edge of poverty and leaped, sometimes blinded by desperation, sometimes guided by an unshakable faith in their own potential. Their leaps were not reckless bungles, they were calculated risks taken in the fertile ground of urgency. They saved a little more, networked a little further, studied a little harder, until momentum carried them beyond the walls that once confined them. Their histories teach us that urgency paired with perseverance unlocks gates of destiny. And as we allow this urgency to stir within us, let us reach across the divide to those still bound by the chains of want. Let us lend not only our resources but our resolve, forging partnerships that transcend individual gain. For when freedom is extended to one, it radiates outward, strengthening the bonds of community. The urgency we feel for our own liberation must swell into a collective cry. No one left behind, no dreams deferred, no hearts hardened by the cold grip of poverty. Feel that fire awaken in your spirit, the fierce, unrelenting belief that now is the time, not later. That action today plants seeds of transformation countless tomorrows away. That hesitation is the enemy of possibility. Let urgency be your ally, urging you to study the markets, to mentor the youth, to invest in innovation, to champion policies that liberate rather than oppress. Let it challenge you to examine your habits, your priorities, your investments of time and treasure. We cannot wait for perfect conditions, for every fear to dissipate, for every obstacle to be removed. The truth is stark. The longer we delay, the deeper poverty's roots grow, the thicker its vines wrap around hope. But when we seize this moment, when we heed the urgent plea of our fellow human beings, we become architects of a world where money is not a master, but a means to freedom, and where poverty is not a permanent sentence, but a call to collective action and compassion. There is profound power in urgency, the power to transform fear into focus, scarcity into stride, worry into wisdom. It beckons us to lean forward with bold hearts, to say yes to the hard work of liberation, to recognize that the time for talk has passed and the hour for action has come. Let the urgency of this moment beat like a drum in your chest, driving you to the front lines of change, inspiring you to live not for self alone, but for the flourishing of all. My friends, embrace this urgency. Let it guide your steps today and every day, for in its call lies the promise of freedom's sure reward. Let us move swiftly together, bound by a shared conviction that poverty's chains can be broken, that doors of opportunity can be flung wide, and that the destiny of our generation rests on the choices we make in this very hour. My friends, close your eyes for a moment and imagine a single drop of water slipping through a narrow crack in parched earth. That drop holds promise, the promise of life, of green shoots pushing through dusty soil, of renewal. Yet if that earth remains dry, the crack grows larger, deeper, until it becomes a chasm that no single drop can bridge. Poverty is that widened fissure in the human spirit, a relentless crack that swallows hopes and dreams, leaving only thirst and longing in its wake. In sharp relief against this stark scene, picture now a river in full flood, its waters rich with alluvial promise, coursing across the land, irrigating fields, powering mills, and sustaining communities. That river is the flow of resources wisely harnessed, the lifeblood of freedom that carries us forward instead of holding us fast in the quicks, and of want. Feel the weight of iron shackles snaking around ankles, biting into flesh, cold and unyielding. Those shackles are the unpaid rent notices piling high on a kitchen table, the medical bills waiting in envelopes stamped by worn hands, the fear that every sunrise brings another forced bargain with dignity. Each link in those chains represents a compromise made under duress. I'll skip the groceries this week. I'll postpone the doctor's visit. I'll set aside my dreams of education. With every sacrifice, another link is forged until the weight grows too heavy even to lift one's gaze. Now sense the opposite, light footsteps on open ground, a breeze that bears no burdens, a heart that beats not in fear but in quiet confidence. This is the freedom purchased when money becomes an instrument of provision rather than a cause of despair. Picture a small wooden door weathered by the sun and bent by the seasons. Behind it lies a family's entire world. Stories shared by lamplight, laughter seeping through cracks, hopes scribbled in the margins of borrowed notebooks. But that door creaks on rusty hinges, prone to collapse under the slightest gale of misfortune. It is the fragile threshold between what is and what might be, held together only by makeshift nails of improvisation. Now envision a grand archway of polished mahogany, carved with the stories of those who walked before and stained by the fingerprints of children who know they will never be turned away. That arch leads to rooms where every whisper of anxiety can be met with calm assurance, where every fear of want finds its answer in ample supply. This is the portal of opportunity that money can unlock when used with care and foresight. Listen to the hollow clatter of an empty pot struck in desperation, its echo a hollow mockery of abundance. Hunger is more than the pang in the stomach. It is the gnawing void that tugs at the soul, whispering that provision is beyond reach. In that echo we hear the rumble of restless nights, the tremors of dreams deferred, the hollow hum of a household held together by duct tape and prayers. Now imagine the gentle thrum of a well-oiled machine, reliable, consistent, humming with productive potential. That throbbing energy is the pulse of commerce, of wages earned fairly and invested wisely, of meals prepared from shelves abundant with choice rather than desperation. It is the sound of a community that eats together in peace, confident that tomorrow's table will be no less full than today's. See a lone figure standing on a broken bridge, peering hesitantly at the jagged gap that separates them from the promise of the other side. The boards are splintered, the ropes frayed, and every step forward carries risk. A slip, a fall, the final plunge. That broken bridge is the path trod by those in poverty who dare to hope, only to find their hopes dashed by systemic barriers, by lack of access, by the creeping vines of discouragement. Across the chasm, see a sturdy suspension bridge, cables taut with strength, planks laid firm with intention, carrying multitudes safely over the same river of challenges. That bridge is built by smart investment, by partnerships forged in shared purpose, by the belief that resources can span divides rather than deepen them. It invites all who come to cross to join in the journey, to share in the view from the other side. Taste the metallic bitterness of fear that fills the mouth when savings dip to zero and the horizon hangs heavy with uncertainty. Fear is a persistent companion in the house of poverty, a specter at every meal, a whisper in every night's dark hours. When fear dominates, it steals appetite for life itself, making even the simplest joys taste sour. Now savor the sweetness of relief when a buffer of savings cushions the blow of unexpected storms, when a modest emergency fund is there to catch you before you fall. That relief is a breath of gratitude, a moment of exultation, a reminder that money, when stewarded well, can be a shield rather than a sword, a balm rather than a burden. Picture a bird trapped in a cage of slender bars painted to look like gold. It sings a hopeful tune, but its wings never stretch wide enough to feel the wind beneath them. That is the soul under the yoke of poverty, spiritually alive, yet physically confined by circumstances beyond its control. Now see that same bird released at dawn, wings catching the sunrise, rising higher with each beat, free to explore the limitless expanse of sky. Freedom, in this image, is not just escape from confinement, but the exhilarating thrill of possibility, the power of choice, the joy of discovery, the melody of life unbound. Feel the persistent ache of a dripping roof in a home too poor for repairs, each drop a reminder of money not available, each puddle a testament to dreams deferred. Home becomes a battleground, not a refuge, as the elements find every weakness, and the mind cannot rest when the walls themselves betray their promise of shelter. Contrast that with the sturdy roof overhead in a home built on a foundation of sound finances. No drips, no drafts, no trembling at the first hint of storm clouds. Inside that secure dwelling, life takes on a quality of peace. Bedtime stories told without fear of leaks, kitchens where laughter rings uninterrupted by the clatter of falling plaster, rooms warmed by both hearth and certainty. See the gaunt face of a child whose only lesson learned is how to survive on scraps of opportunity, whose playground is the uneven pavement of necessity rather than the rolling fields of possibility. Education becomes a luxury they cannot afford, imagination a fleeting flicker in the dark. Now behold a child stepping into a classroom bright with promise, desks arranged for collaboration, books brimming with tales of what might be, teachers ready to invest in potential rather than manage deficits. That child carries with them the lightness of hope, the hunger for knowledge, and the knowledge that their future is not preordained by circumstance, but shaped by the abundant resources at their disposal. Picture the weary traveler on a narrow path choked by brambles, each step forward a battle, each breath an effort. That is the journey of those walking in the shadow of poverty, hemmed in by obstacles that multiply with every attempt to advance. Then shift your gaze to a broad avenue lined with trees, each one planted by hands guided by vision, shading the way toward tomorrow. On that avenue, travelers move freely, stopping to greet neighbors, sharing the bounty they carry, spawning new pathways into neighborhoods yet undiscovered. That is the road money paves when it is poured into infrastructure, into education, into the fertile ground of human potential. Hear the distant call of church bells muffled by the roar of an engine that can't afford fuel, signaling gatherings that go unattended because hope itself lacks the means to travel. Shame and exhaustion keep people bound in their homes, afraid to join the chorus of shared faith, community, and vision. Yet, when finances are in order, the same bells ring clear, invitations unfurl into open hands, and hearts gather in sanctuary, united not by scarcity, but by abundance of spirit, by contributions freely given, by the knowledge that fellowship flourishes when resources flow. Sense the prickly tension in a crowded bus, every seat claimed, every body pressed against another, each person tethered to a fixed route dictated by someone else's schedule. That is the transit of those who cannot afford alternatives, public systems overstretched, private options out of reach, freedom constrained to timetables not their own. Then imagine the quiet comfort of choice cars, bicycles, taxis, shared rides, vehicles that carry individuals not only across space but toward job interviews, family reunions, and the countless destinations freedom affords. Mobility is more than physical movement. It is the capacity to chart one's own course. Picture a solitary figure at the edge of a dock, a simple fishing boat bobbing gently on the water, nets torn and hopes frayed. That vessel is the singular livelihood of one family, kept afloat by meager catch, subject to the caprices of tide and season. Now visualize a bustling harbor, cargo ships, fishing fleets, pleasure crafts, all vessels that set sail because capital has built piers, provided engines, financed fleets, and insured voyages. The harbor hums with commerce and community, and each person on each boat is part of a tapestry woven by freedom's thread. Imagine the fragile candle of ambition flickering in the wind of doubt in the corridor of closed doors. The breeze threatens to extinguish it, and without sustenance it sputters out, leaving only a memory of what could have been. That candle is the spark within every human heart desperate to shine. Now feel the steady glow of a row of lamps on a tree-lined street, lamps installed through community vision, maintained by collective investment, guiding every passer by safely through the night. That light is the beacon of freedom when money buys not only survival, but illumination. Taste the cold bitterness of defeat when one returns from the marketplace empty-handed, the chorus of rejection echoing in each step. The stalls that once brimmed with hope stand abandoned, their merchants gone, their wares unsold. That emptiness is the echo chamber of poverty, trapping the mind in a loop of try and fail without restitution. Contrast that with the warm aroma of success when shelves brim with goods, when entrepreneurs find buyers ready and eager, when the marketplace hums with the promise of reward for honest toil. That is the aroma of freedom itself, inviting all who hunger for dignity to come and dine. Sense the cramped quarters of a single room where generations have lived shoulder to shoulder, each breath a shared commodity, each privacy a forgotten luxury. The walls hold memories of laughter and tears, but also the claustrophobia of lives lived in high relief, without the room to expand or to breathe. Then envision an open, plan home designed for both community and solitude, spaces ample for gathering and rooms reserved for reflection. In that dwelling, money has built not only shelter but sanctuary, crafting a canvas upon which life can paint its full spectrum of experiences. And finally, hear the swelling chorus of a crowd unafraid to sing its anthem, its voices rising in harmony because each one has had a chance to taste the sweetness of provision, to feel the certainty of care, to touch the promise of tomorrow. That song is the song of freedom, vibrant, unchained, resonant with the rhythms of lives unbound by the drudgery of want. Let it ring in our ears, let it stir our hearts, let it compel us to invest, to share, to build, to imagine a world where the imagery of bondage gives way to the panorama of liberation. My friends, tonight I want to speak directly to your heart, to the deepest reaches of your own hopes and anxieties, for we all carry within us the twin seeds of yearning and trepidation. You know the dreams that stir you in the quiet hours, the vision of waking each morning unburdened by the nagging ache of unpaid bills, the image of providing for your family without counting every coin, the longing to step into a world where opportunity waits with open arms rather than closed doors. You also know the fears that whisper in the dark, the dread that tomorrow's paycheck won't stretch far enough, the worry that a single setback, a car repair, a medical bill, an unexpected crisis will shatter the fragile balance you struggle to maintain. These dreams and fears are not mere abstractions. They are the real currency of our lives, shaping our choices, coloring our days, and guiding the trajectory of our souls. Perhaps you remember lying awake late at night, the soft glow of a phone screen illuminating mounting notifications, rent reminders, credit card statements, loan notices. Each one a reminder that freedom feels just out of reach. You feel the tension coil in your chest, as though someone has wound a spring too tight inside you, ready to snap at the slightest pressure. You think of the child in the next room, breathing peacefully in sleep, innocent of the burdens you carry, and your heart squeezes with a longing to give them better than you have known. In that moment, you taste a bitter resolve. You must find a way out of this place of scarcity, not just for yourself, but for every life entrusted to your care. And yet, on other days, a spark lights your spirit, a moment when you glimpse what's possible. Maybe it's a mentor who shares wisdom freely, showing you that strategic saving and wise investment can transform worry into confidence. Maybe it's a friend who tells of a small business started in a garage that now feeds dozens of families. Maybe it's your own memory of a time when your feet moved swiftly across solid ground, when the weight of want lifted and you felt the wind of possibility at your back. Those moments are the glimmer of freedom calling to you, urging you to press forward, to embrace the work of creation rather than the resignation of survival. I know that each of us carries a unique story, a narrative shaped by the contours of circumstance and the choices we've made. Some of you grew up in homes where every penny was fought for, where the absence of abundance taught you the art of careful stewardship, but also left you with scars of scarcity. Others among you may have known the comforts of plenty, only to lose them in a single downturn, discovering that the sweetness of security can sour overnight. Wherever you stand on that spectrum, the personal stakes remain the same. Your dreams beckon you toward freedom, and your fears threaten to hold you in slavery to lack. There is a quiet power in naming these fears, in bringing them from the shadowy corners of the mind into the clear light of day. When we acknowledge how deeply we fear failure, rejection, the embarrassment of asking for help, we begin to unravel the chains that poverty forges around our hearts. And when we dare to speak aloud the dreams that burn within us, to build a legacy, to create beauty, to serve our communities, then we lend voice to freedom before it has even been fully realized. Speak those dreams. Let them ring in your mind like a clarion call, demanding that your life rise to meet them. You may have noticed how often we shy away from such honest confession. We hide behind polite smiles at family gatherings. We nod along when others boast of their secure finances. And we compare ourselves to those who seem more fortunate, allowing our fears to whisper that we are somehow less worthy. Yet the truth is that every soul in this room has walked through valleys of doubt. Every heart has raced at the prospect of coming up short. The difference between those who remain bound and those who soar lies in whether they dare to bring their longings into the light, to imagine what life could be, and to take the first trembling steps toward that vision. And so I ask you now, what is your deepest yearning? Is it the tranquility of knowing that your family will never see you despair at the clutter of bills? Is it the thrill of innovation, of launching something new that ripples out blessing? Is it the simple joy of giving, a lavish gift that lights up a child's eyes, an unexpected act of kindness that reshapes a neighbor's day? Hold that yearning tight, for it is the compass that guides you to freedom. But alongside that yearning, name your fears with equal clarity. Do you fear that you lack the skill, the education, the connections to seize opportunity when it appears? Do you fear that every step forward will be met with unseen barriers, discouragements that sap your resolve? Do you fear that generosity will leave you depleted, that the very act of reaching out to help will strip away what little you possess? These fears are not signs of personal failure. They are the echo of systemic chains that bind many, but they can become the catalysts for courageous action when we shine the light of awareness upon them. Imagine a young woman who has dreamed of owning her own home since childhood. She can see the fresh paint on the living room walls, the laughter around the dinner table, the sanctuary in which her family will thrive. But for years she has been haunted by the fear that her credit score will never recover, that the banks will turn her away again, that her dreams are a luxury she cannot afford. Then one day she seeks out guidance, finds a program that helps her slowly repair her financial standing, and the slow but steady progress fans into a flame of confidence. Each small deposit in her savings account, each budget carefully planned, each late fee avoided becomes a brick in the foundation of her future. Her story is your story. Her victory whispers that your own dreams need not remain distant. Or consider the father who longs to invest in his children's education, knowing that knowledge is a currency that time cannot devalue. Yet he trembles at the thought of student loans, of interest that compounds like a creeping fog, of obligations that might consume his family for decades. Then he discovers scholarships, community support, apprenticeships, pathways that require not just money but strategic planning, perseverance, and a willingness to knock on doors until they open. As he walks that road, his fears transform into fuel, his doubts crystallize into questions that drive him to seek answers, and his dreams unfold into blueprints for action. Perhaps you see yourself in the story of the entrepreneur who dared to risk personal savings to launch a small enterprise, a cafe, a tutoring service, a craft business. She felt the thrum of fear each morning as she unlocked the door, wondering if today's customers would come. There were lean months, months of long hours and thin profits, months when her heart sank and she questioned whether she had made a grievous mistake. Yet she pressed on, fueled by the vision of a business that would create jobs, that would double as a community gathering place, that would stand as testament to what determination and faithful investment could achieve. Now her enterprise hums with life. Employees smile behind the register. Local families gather over steaming cups, and the echo of freedom rings in every clink of coffee cups. These are not fantasies. They are the lived experiences of people who dared to attend to both their dreams and their fears, who invited both to the table of their decision-making. And in that invitation, they found that dreams without fear can become reckless, and fears without dreams become paralyzing. But when the two are held together, dream guiding direction, fear sharpening focus, then the path toward freedom emerges. I want you to imagine standing at a mirror, looking into your own eyes with raw honesty. See the lines of worry that no eye cream can erase, See the sparkle of hope that no hardship can fully extinguish. Recognize that the story etched on your face is a masterpiece in progress, written by every struggle you've endured and every aspiration you still clutch. This is your story, and you alone hold the pen to write the next chapter. You might ask, how do I begin? Begin by speaking to a trusted friend or mentor, lay bare your dreams, share the vivid details of what freedom looks like to you, and then speak your fears, the worst case scenarios you imagine, the obstacles that loom large. In naming them aloud, you build a map of both the peaks you wish to climb and the valleys you must pass through. From that map, you can chart a course that anticipates challenges even as it reaches for horizons. Let us also remember that personal connection thrives in a community. Your dreams and fears find their greatest power when shared with others who walk alongside you. There is a sacred alchemy that occurs when we gather around a table, whether literal or metaphorical, and lay our dreams and our fears in the center, allowing wisdom to flow from every seat. In doing so, our collective vision grows clearer, our individual burdens grow lighter, and freedom becomes not a solitary conquest, but a shared jubilee. As you move forward, hold fast to the conviction that your dreams are valid, that your fears are not fatal. Learn to speak to both with grace, dreams with the exuberance of possibility, fears with the respect of those lanes you must navigate carefully. In the tension between the two, you will find the muscle of resilience being built, the architecture of your freedom being designed. Imagine now the ripple effect of one person who lives in this harmony, dreams and fears aligned, steps taken with both boldness and prudence. That person impact will be felt in boardrooms and living rooms, in grocery lines and classrooms, in the hearts of spouses, children, neighbors. For when you claim your own liberation, you become a beacon, lighting the path for others to follow. And each step you take toward the fulfillment of your vision weakens the shackles of poverty that chain us all, replacing them with the bonds of shared purpose and mutual uplift. My friends, your dreams call to you like an anthem written for your soul, and your fears stand guard like sentries urging caution. Invite both to the table, listen to each in turn, and then set forth with a steady heart. Let your personal connection to this truth, money buys freedom, poverty buys slavery, speak louder than any abstract doctrine. May the authenticity of your yearning and the honesty of your anxiety guide every decision, every transaction, every sacrifice, until the day when you look back and see not a string of missed opportunities, but a trail of triumphs born of clarity, conviction, and compassion. My friends, have you ever paused in the quiet of your own heart and asked yourself what it truly means to be free? Have you ever wondered why, despite the promises of plenty all around us, so many of us still feel the weight of invisible chains pressing down upon our souls? When you wake in the early dawn and hear the whispers of your own anxieties, will today be different? Will this be the day that hope breaks through? Have you listened to those questions as invitations to deeper reflection rather than simply burdens to bear? Can you recall a moment when a single question changed the course of your life, when the simple act of asking "what if" opened a door you never even knew existed? Have you ever watched a child's eyes light up at the prospect of possibility, their imagination dancing with every "what could I become," and felt the stirrings of envy at their unguarded hope? And have you then questioned why, as grown adults, we so often shut down that wonder? Why can't I believe that change is possible for me too? When we encounter someone who seems to have found the secret to a life of abundance, do we ask, what did they do differently? What choices did they make that I have not? Or do we instead whisper sour judgments to justify our own resignation? They're just lucky. It could never happen for me. Have you ever stood at the edge of a decision, heart pounding, mind racing, and asked, if not now, when? If not me, who? Have you felt the tremor of promise in those words, or have you let fear drown them out with the counterpoint of doubt? But what if I fail? What if I look foolish? Have you noticed how quickly your spirit can shift from expectancy to cautious retreat when you add the simple two words, what if, before every dream, every aspiration? And have you considered that perhaps those questions could be turned on their head? What if I succeed beyond my wildest expectations? Or what if my greatest fear is merely a shadow, and on the other side of it lies my most glorious victory? When sorrow darkens your doorstep, have you ever asked, what lesson is here for me? How can this pain refine me? Or do you instead whisper in the dark, why me? Why has this happened to me? Have you ever felt that transformative moment when you choose the first question over the second, recognizing that grief can be the birthplace of empathy and suffering the crucible in which compassion is forged? Have you ever turned to another person in the midst of your own anguish and asked, how can I serve you in your suffering, even as I bear my own? And felt the surprising lightness that comes from extending a hand rather than curling into isolation? Have you ever considered that money itself is not the measure of your worth, but rather the means by which your highest values can be expressed? Have you asked, what does true freedom look like for me? Is it the absence of want or the presence of purpose? When the scoreboard of your bank account seems to shout the verdict of your life's worth, have you challenged it with the question, does my value rest in these numbers, or in the ways I love and the lives I touch? Have you ever directly asked yourself, if I had all the money I could ever need, what would I do with it first? And then paused long enough to let the answer settle in your spirit before you chased the next goal. When you think of poverty, have you ever asked, what chains bind the hearts of those who live in scarcity? What walls are erected by the fear of tomorrow? Have you ever looked into the eyes of a neighbor struggling to make ends meet and wondered, what unseen burdens do they carry, and how can I help to bear them? Do you ever confront your own privilege with the question, how have I been spared, and what responsibilities does that sparing place upon me? And have you felt that thrill of possibility when you realize that every act of generosity, every extension of grace, can chip away at those walls, one brick at a time? Have you ever observed the habits of those who live freely, not in luxury but in peace, and asked, what rhythms shape their days? How do they cultivate contentment even when resources are limited? Have you peered into the daily routines of the generous-hearted and wondered, what disciplines can I adopt to open my own hands more fully, to trust that giving will not leave me empty but will expand my capacity to receive? Have you ever sat quietly with your own ledger of time and treasure and asked, am I investing in what truly matters, or merely reacting to the urgencies that shout the loudest? Think for a moment of the stories you tell yourself about success and failure. Have you ever asked, are these narratives serving me or imprisoning me? When you look back on your past, do you see a series of missteps to mourn, or stepping stones that led you forward? Have you ever confronted the internal critic with the question, is this voice of doubt rooted in fact, or simply a hollow echo of old fears? And have you ever paused long enough to imagine the alternative soundtrack, one that hums with encouragement rather than condemnation, that whispers you can instead of you can't? Have you ever spent time pondering the legacy you will leave behind? Have you asked, when I am gone, what will remain of my life's work? Will it be the size of my estate or the depth of the relationships I've nurtured? Have you wrestled with the idea that lasting impact is rarely measured in dollars and cents, but rather in the pulses of compassion, the sparks of inspiration, the ripple effects of kindness? And have you ever then looked at the person next to you and asked out loud, how has your life touched mine, and how can I honor that gift in the days ahead? When you find yourself overwhelmed by the scale of need, So many hungry, so many hurting, so many hoping for a lifeline. Have you ever whispered, "Where do I begin? How can one person really make a difference?" And then, have you paused to remember that the first step is simply to ask, "What small thing can I do today?" Have you tested the power of one meal shared, one favor offered, one prayer lifted, one hand held, and discovered how it can multiply beyond your reckoning? Have you allowed that experience to fuel a deeper question? If one person can start a chain reaction, what might we accomplish together? Have you ever gazed at the stars on a clear night and asked, "What vastness surrounds me, and what does that say about the Creator of all things?" Have you felt the shiver of awe as you contemplated the scale of the universe, and then asked, "What significance does my small life hold in this grand tapestry?" Yet have you also felt the comforting conviction that each star, though small, is essential to the night sky's brilliance, and that your own existence, though brief in cosmic terms, carries its unique light? Have you ever let that truth guide you to ask, "How can I shine brightest in the place where I stand?" When the world seems awash in turmoil and uncertainty, have you ever questioned, "Where is the anchor that holds firm?" In the swirl of politics, of markets, of shifting social landscapes, have you sought out a measure more stable than the ebb and flow of fortune? Have you asked, "What principles are timeless? What truths unchanging? What hopes eternal?" And have you then tested every decision against that anchor, letting those questions steer you toward shores of calm even in the fiercest storm? Have you ever confronted the notion that failure is final and challenged it with the question, "Is this really the end, or merely the starting line for a new race?" When a venture collapses or a relationship falters, do you allow your spirit to crater, or do you lean into the discomfort and ask, "What must I learn here? How can I build more wisely next time?" Have you ever discovered that in the very soil of failure sprouts the seed of a breakthrough, if only you have the courage to water it with faith and perseverance? Consider the moments of quiet joy that ripple through your life, a child's laughter, a sunset's glow, a hand held in companionship. Have you ever pondered, why do these simple pleasures feel so profound, and what do they reveal about the heart's deepest longings? Have you asked, how can I cultivate more moments like these, not by chasing novelty, but by attuning my spirit to gratitude? And have you tested the power of gratitude as a daily question? What am I thankful for today? And marveled at how it reshapes your perspective on freedom, shifting your gaze from emptiness to abundance. Have you ever met someone whose resilience in the face of hardship left you speechless and asked, what inner wellspring sustains them? Have you observed the quiet strength of those who refuse to be defined by their circumstances and said to yourself, what is the secret of their steadfast hope? When you look within, do you find the same reservoir of courage waiting to be tapped, or do you recognize that it requires deliberate cultivation? Have you tried to ask yourself daily, how can I strengthen my spirit today? And then taken steps to feed your soul with truth, with community, with purpose. When you encounter the beauty of creation, the green forests, the flowing rivers, the majesty of mountain peaks, have you ever questioned, what does this reveal about the heart that formed it? Have you paused in reverent wonder and asked, why have I been granted the privilege to witness such splendor, and how ought that privilege shape my life? Do you then feel the stirrings of responsibility to honor that Creator by caring for one another and for the world entrusted to our stewardship? Can you remember the last time you gazed upon someone in need, hungry, exhausted, disheartened, and asked, how would I feel in their place? Have you walked in another's shoes in that moment and allowed empathy to bypass your defenses? When you felt that pang of shared humanity, did you then ask, what must I do to alleviate their burden? And move toward them with hands ready to give and heart ready to love. Have you ever asked, What does legacy look like in the currency of heaven? When human accolades fade and earthly treasures rust, what remains? Have you considered that the measure of a life well lived may not be found in its length or its wealth, but in the depth of its love, the breadth of its service, the constancy of its faith? And have you then challenged yourself? Am I investing in eternity with my daily choices, or am I squandering these precious moments on things that perish? Have you ever sensed the quiet invitation to step out of your comfort zone and asked, what would it look like to risk in order to reap a harvest of blessings? When the path ahead seems fraught with uncertainty, do you recoil in fear or lean in with faith? Have you tested the hypothesis that bold obedience yields the richest rewards and then asked, what step of courage can I take today, even if it's a small one, that moves me closer to the freedom I crave? Have you ever felt the tug of distraction, the pings on your phone, the endless scroll of news feeds, the clamoring demands that pull you off course, and asked, what is the most important thing right now? Have you pressed past the noise to name that one priority and then reorganized your day around it? Do you find that in doing so, your spirit breathes more freely and your sense of purpose sharpens like a well-honed blade? My friends, I ask you now, will you let these questions shape your journey? Will you dare to lean into them, to speak them aloud and wrestle with their answers in the quiet of your own heart and in the fellowship of others? For in the art of asking lies the beginning of wisdom, and in the courage to reflect lies the birth of transformation. May your lives be marked not by the silence of unexamined routine, but by the clarion call of inquiry, questions that crack open your spirit like a seed, allowing the freedom within to blossom into all that you were created to be. My friends, tonight I want us to dwell on two words that hold within them the destinies of our hearts and the paths of our lives: freedom and slavery. Freedom, freedom to breathe without fear, freedom to hope without shame, freedom to walk tall beneath the weight of tomorrow's promises. Slavery, slavery to debt, slavery to doubt, slavery to the ceaseless grind of endless worry. Freedom, 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 a word that rings like a bell at the gates of heaven. Slavery, 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 a word that echoes through the chambers of a broken soul. Let us speak these words tonight until they resonate in the depths of every heart here. Freedom and slavery. Freedom is the sun breaking through a storm, a morning without clouds, a song without end. Slavery is the thunder in the night, the chains around our ankles, the song that dies on the lips. Freedom is walking into a room and greeting tomorrow with a smile. Slavery is shrinking in the corner, haunted by yesterday's failures. Freedom is the taste of fresh bread shared among friends. Slavery is the stale crumbs scraped from an empty bowl. Freedom is the laughter of children playing without care. Slavery is their tears at bedtime, fears they cannot name. Freedom and slavery, let these words roll off your tongue, let them stir your blood. Freedom is the power to choose your path. Slavery is the prison of circumstance. Freedom is the victory bell of one who has paid off every debt. Slavery is the gnawing ache of rent notices piling sky high. Freedom is the sunrise of hope unfettered. Slavery is the eclipse of aspiration. Freedom is a heart unchained, beating boldly. Slavery is a heart encased in iron. Freedom is the breath of peace. Slavery is the gasp of desperation. Freedom is the open road. Slavery is the dead-end street. Freedom is the gentle breeze of possibility. Slavery is the suffocating cloak of fear. Freedom is the word we must hold high. Slavery is the word we must refuse to serve. Have you felt freedom in your bones, my friends? Have you felt the rush of relief when a burden is lifted, when a weight falls away from your shoulders? That feeling is freedom. And have you known slavery when the weight seems endless, when every breath you draw tastes of anxiety? That grim sensation is slavery. We must recognize them both. We must name them both, freedom and slavery, freedom and slavery. Let them guide every choice we make, every step we take. Freedom is not merely a dream, it is a decision. Slavery is not merely a condition, it is a choice. We choose freedom when we invest wisely, when we plan carefully, when we give generously. We choose slavery when we squander all we have, when we postpone prudence, when we fear to share. Freedom is sowing today for tomorrow's harvest. Slavery is living only for today's fleeting pleasures. Freedom is the architect's blueprint laid out with purpose. Slavery is the tent pitched wherever the winds of chaos blow. Freedom is the calm within the storm. Slavery is the storm within the calm. Look around you. These walls, these seats, these faces. All of us bound together by one simple truth. We were made for freedom, not for slavery. Yet so many among us live as captives, captives of credit card bills, captives of unmet expectations, captives of the tyrant called lack. Freedom calls us like a trumpet blast. Slavery whispers temptations that sound like comfort but deliver only sorrow. Freedom invites us to rise, slavery beckons us to sink. Freedom and slavery, freedom to rise, slavery to fall. Imagine a life of freedom, a life where your decisions are not dictated by fear but directed by faith. Freedom to say yes to opportunity, freedom to say no to temptation, freedom to pursue your calling without the burden of debt, freedom to give without the dread of running dry, freedom to rest without the whisper of regret. Freedom to dream without the specter of failure, that is the promise we pursue. But beware, my friends, for the counterfeits of freedom lie all around, a fancy facade that crumbles under scrutiny, a gilded cage that dazzles the eye but imprisons the soul. Slavery, so we repeat, freedom, 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 slavery, slavery, slavery. Let the rhythm of these words drum in your heart. Freedom is the victorious shout of one who stands on the mountaintop. Slavery is the muffled cry of one buried in the valley. Freedom is the open door flung wide. Slavery is the locked gate with bolts and bars. Freedom is built brick by brick, choice by choice, act by act. Freedom is the harvest of discipline, the reward of restraint, the harvest of generosity. Slavery is the weed that grows in neglected fields, the blight of self-indulgence, the vine of fear strangling the vine of hope. Freedom requires diligence, budgeting, saving, investing, giving. Slavery thrives on neglect, impulse, procrastination, greed, fear. Freedom is earned through stewardship. Slavery is the result of surrender. Freedom and slavery, two paths, two outcomes. Hear the stories of those who have walked from slavery into freedom. The single mother who paid down debt one bill at a time until her home was her sanctuary, not a cage. The immigrant who toiled in a foreign land, living frugally, sending half his earnings home, and discovered that every sacrifice built a bridge out of bondage. The small business owner who resisted the easy loans with crippling interest, chose lean growth, and now sees her employees flourish under a roof she once feared she could never afford. These stories are testimonies to the power of freedom, testimonies against the tyranny of slavery. Freedom and slavery, freedom won, slavery undone. My friends, the enemy of freedom is always close. Slavery lurks in the desire for more without end, in the illusion that happiness resides in things rather than heart. Slavery beckons with the siren song of instant gratification. Freedom replies with the melody of long-term joy. Freedom whispers, invest wisely. Slavery shouts, spend recklessly. Freedom says, save this month for peace next month. Slavery urges, buy it now, worry about it later. Freedom demands foresight. Slavery delights in foolishness. Yet even those who find themselves in the depths of slavery can rise. The chains we wear are often forged by our own hands, hands that can also dismantle them. The door that locks us in is the same door we can learn to open. Freedom awaits all who will seek it, all who will choose it, all who will claim it. Freedom is not a distant star. It is within reach of every one of us. Slavery is not a permanent state. It is a condition we can break. Freedom inspires generosity. When we taste freedom, we cannot help but share it. A heart set free overflows and outpours compassion for those still bound. Freedom leads us to give of our time, our talent, our treasure. Freedom compels us to build community centers, to fund scholarships, to mentor the next generation. Freedom and slavery. Freedom builds up, slavery tears down. Freedom multiplies, slavery diminishes. Freedom binds us together in love, slavery isolates us in fear. Freedom energizes creativity. The artist who paints with abandon, the entrepreneur who innovates with confidence, the family that plans their future with excitement. Each one is moved by freedom. Slavery stifles the imagination. Slavery warns, stay safe, stay small, stay hidden. Freedom proclaims, dare to dream, dare to risk, dare to soar. Freedom is the wind beneath the wings of human potential. Slavery is the stone weight strapped to ambition's ankles. Freedom nurtures peace. In freedom we find rest, in freedom we find security, in freedom we find the quiet joy of contentment. Slavery begets restlessness, slavery breeds anxiety, slavery births discontent like a choking vine. Freedom is the gentle current of a river on a calm day. Slavery is the rapids that toss us heedlessly. Freedom whispers lullabies to the weary. Slavery sounds an alarm we cannot silence. Freedom restores, slavery depletes. Freedom honors dignity. When you walk in freedom, you stand tall in your own worth. You do not beg for scraps. You claim your place at the table. You do not apologize for your needs. You recognize your God-given value. Slavery diminishes worth. It says you are nothing. It says you are less than. Slavery steals dignity. Freedom redeems it. Freedom and slavery. One exalts, the other destroys. Freedom demands responsibility. To be free is to be accountable, to be responsible for our choices, for our families, for our communities. Slavery is evasion. Blame shifting, excuse, making, hand, wringing. Freedom is the owner's stance. Slavery is the victim's posture. Freedom stands tall. Freedom looks in the mirror and says, I am the maker of my destiny. Slavery looks out the window and says, the world does this to me. Freedom and slavery. Freedom owns, slavery blames. Freedom blesses generations. The choices we make today echo down the corridors of time. Freedom sows seeds of opportunity for our children and grandchildren. Slavery sows seeds of debt and despair that choke hope for those who follow. Freedom is the inheritance that outlasts silver and gold. Slavery is the legacy that haunts. Freedom and slavery. Freedom builds legacies. Slavery buries dreams. Freedom is the language of the liberated soul. Freedom sings in the laughter of children who know their parents will care for them. Slavery sobs in the tears of orphans who know no refuge. Freedom dances in the harvest festival of a community that has triumphed over want. Slavery skulks in the alleys where hunger is the constant companion. Freedom and slavery. Freedom sings, slavery weeps, so let us speak. Freedom, 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 let us condemn slavery, slavery, slavery. Let these twin words be the anthem of our resolve. Let them guide our budgets, our investments, our generosity, our work, our rest, our dreams, our hopes. Freedom and slavery, two words that define destinies, two words that summon us to choose. Freedom and slavery. May we choose wisely, may we choose boldly, may we choose freedom. My friends, tonight I want us to lean into a simple yet profound truth. The resources we hold in our hands, our time, our talents, our treasures, carry within them a moral weight that echoes far beyond our own lives. Each dollar we earn, each hour we spend, each gift we give or withhold is not merely a transaction in an impersonal marketplace. It is a decision laden with moral significance, a vote cast for the kind of world we wish to build. When you pause at the threshold of choice, faced with the impulse to spend lavishly on yourself or to share generously with someone in need, Do you feel that quiet tug of responsibility, that gentle yet persistent voice asking, "How will my actions bear witness to the values I hold dear?" That tug is the moral weight of stewardship calling you to account. Imagine a farmer standing in a field at dawn, surveying rows of seed he has planted. The seeds themselves are small, almost insignificant, yet in them resides the promise of life and sustenance for countless souls. If he sows them carelessly, scattershot, the yield will be meager. If he refuses to sow at all out of fear of loss, the field will lie fallow and barren. But if he tends them with care, watering and weeding, protecting them from pests, then a harvest beyond his imagining becomes possible. In that field we see the moral weight of our gifts. If we use our resources with wisdom and compassion, they will bear fruit not only for ourselves, but for our neighbors, our communities, and even for generations yet unborn. Do you recall the story of the widow who gave 2 small coins, coins that scarcely made a ripple in the treasury chest? On the surface, her offering seemed insignificant compared to the thousands cast in by others, yet she gave all she had, and in doing so demonstrated a depth of trust and generosity unmatched by those with surplus. What moral lesson do we draw from her sacrifice? It is this: the value of a gift is not measured by its size, but by the heart with which it is given, by the sense of responsibility that transforms mere currency into an act of love. When we recognize that moral weight, we learn that our smallest gestures, when offered freely, can become vessels of grace. Consider the professional who labors long hours at a demanding job, driven by the promise of promotions and pay raises. The money she accumulates buys comfort, convenience, and security, yet if she hoards those gains, investing only in her own comfort, she risks becoming hardened to the plight of those who toil beside her for a fraction of her wage. But if she chooses to direct a portion of her earnings toward empowering underemployed neighbors, toward supporting local schools or shelters, she acknowledges the moral gravity of her position. Her paycheck becomes more than a reward for personal effort. It becomes a catalyst for justice, a means of lifting others from confinement into dignity. Have you ever opened your wallet and wondered where your money is going? Beyond the retail receipts and credit card statements, each line item represents a choice, some made unconsciously, others made deliberately. When we buy organic foods at a slightly higher cost, are we driven merely by taste preferences, or by a desire to honor the earth and the farmers who steward it? When we choose budget accommodations for vacation rather than luxury resorts, are we simply seeking thrift, or are we mindful of diverting resources to more urgent causes at home? These are not questions of mere frugality, but of moral discernment. They remind us that every dollar withheld from extravagance is a dollar freed to address hunger, to provide clean water, to strengthen the most vulnerable among us. Think of the teacher who spends evenings grading papers, not for glory or reward, but because she recognizes the moral weight of her influence on young minds. Her salary purchases a modest home and groceries, but her true investment lies in the hours she devotes to nurturing curiosity, instilling confidence, and opening doors of opportunity. When her students go on to become engineers, nurses, artists, or leaders, they carry not only the knowledge she imparted, but the implicit message that someone believed in them enough to invest time and attention. In this way, resource stewardship transcends the financial realm and enters the sacred space of human transformation. And what of our time? Time is the most democratic of resources. All of us receive the same 24 hours each day. Yet we assign vastly different moral values to how we spend those hours. When we choose to volunteer at a food bank rather than bin, watch another series, we embrace the weight of responsibility that accompanies our freedom. When we carve out moments to listen deeply to a friend's struggles instead of scrolling mindlessly through social media, we use our time to affirm human worth. These decisions, though they cost us leisure, yield a moral dividend that enriches both giver and receiver. Do you feel the pull when you contemplate donating a significant portion of your income to charity? That tug at your conscience is the moral weight of privilege reminding you that with greater means comes greater opportunity and obligation to alleviate suffering. And yes, it can feel risky to part with what we have earned. The thought of unexpected bills or future needs can loom large. Yet when we surrender a measure of security to serve the vulnerable, we participate in a divine economy where sacrifice begets abundance, where every gift made in humility and faith becomes a seed that multiplies beyond our comprehension. Consider the community that rallies around a single parent struggling to make ends meet. Neighbors donate meals, friends offer babysitting hours, local businesses provide discounts and job referrals. In this web of care, resources, food, time, employment opportunities flow freely, bearing the moral weight of shared responsibility. Each donation, each handshake of encouragement, binds that family ever closer to the fabric of communal health. In such moments, we glimpse the true power of stewardship. It is the recognition that our resources matter most when they are entrusted to a purpose greater than ourselves. Have you ever conducted a personal audit of your values against your spending habits? The truth is stark. We cannot plow ahead in a certain direction without leaving footprints behind, and those footprints leave impressions on the lives of others. When we invest heavily in personal entertainment while ignoring causes that speak of systemic injustice, we reveal a misalignment of resources and convictions. But when we align our financial flows with our moral compass, dedicating a portion of our budget to education, to health care, to economic development, we transform our choices into testimonies of integrity. I have met business owners who view their enterprises not merely as profit, generating machines, but as platforms for change. They practice fair wages, sustainable sourcing, community reinvestment, and ethical labor practices, even when these choices reduce their bottom line. They do so because they sense the moral weight of their position. Every sale, every hire, every partnership carries consequences for human dignity and environmental stewardship. Their names may not be found in headlines, but their impact reverberates in the lives of workers who feed their families with steadier wages, in the health of communities enriched by charitable initiatives, and in marketplaces where integrity outshines mere competition. And what of our spiritual resources, our empathy, our compassion, our ability to forgive? These are intangible currencies of the soul, yet they too bear moral weight. When we lavish kindness on those who have wronged us, when we forgive debts that cannot be repaid, we invest in a realm that transcends economics. Our acts of mercy become social capital, healing rifts that money alone cannot bridge. In this sense, stewardship is not confined to balance sheets. It extends into the broader ledger of human relations, adding entries of grace that no accountant can quantify. How do we measure the moral weight of our consumption? One way is to ask, what is the human and ecological cost of producing this item? When we purchase fast fashion at rock bottom prices, do we consider the sweatshop wages or the polluted waterways left behind? Or when we choose products certified as ethically made, do we rejoice that our resources uphold dignity and preserve creation? In each small decision, clothing, electronics, groceries, we exercise stewardship that either lightens or compounds the world's burdens. Have you ever hesitated at the checkout line, debit card in hand, feeling that momentary pause as more than a fleeting thought, but as a spiritual check-in? That pause invites you to weigh your options, to consider whether this purchase serves your needs or feeds a hollow desire, whether it enhances your life or distracts you from your calling. In those seconds of discernment, The moral weight of responsibility presses upon you, urging you to spend not merely with convenience in mind, but with conscience in view. And when it comes to debt, credit cards, loans, mortgages, we must recognize the moral chains that unbridled borrowing can forge. Debt that is wisely managed, invested in education or housing, can serve as a tool of empowerment. But debt that accumulates through unchecked spending, interest piling upon interest, can become a yoke that stifles freedom and dampens generosity. In such cases, the moral weight of our commitments demands that we choose restraint, that we plan budgets, that we pay down principal, also that we may one day stand on the other side unburdened and free to redistribute what was once earmarked merely for repayment. Perchance you have wealth beyond measure, an inheritance, a profitable venture, an unexpected windfall, and wonder what bearing it should have on your life's purpose. Should you build grand monuments to your success, or should you channel those resources into creating institutions that lift others? Should you keep your fortune in sheltered investments, or should you risk it in ventures that address social ills? These questions remind us that abundance amplifies moral responsibility. The greater our capacity to give, the more imperative it becomes to give wisely, generously, and sacrificially. Have you considered forming a circle of accountability with trustworthy friends, people who will challenge your spending habits, who will celebrate your generosity, who will walk alongside you as you navigate the moral dimensions of money? In community, we learn that stewardship is not a solitary endeavor but a shared journey. We encourage one another to give boldly, to plan prudently, to invest strategically, all while holding fast to humility and compassion. My friends, do not underestimate the influence of your choices. The cup of coffee you buy, the car you drive, the charity you support, the hours you volunteer, all these bear moral weight. Each decision carves a pathway either toward freedom or toward forgetfulness of our highest callings. Let us choose with intentionality, recognizing that our resources are not ends in themselves, but means to embodying love in action, justice in practice, and hope in tangible form. So tonight, as you reflect on your own stewardship, ask yourself, how will I use what I have been given? Will I bury my talents in the soil of fear and doubt? Or will I invest them in the flourishing of others? Will I balance my ledger in pursuit of comfort alone? Or will I allow my generosity to tilt the scales toward community uplift? Remember that moral weight is not a burden to break us, but a guiding compass that points us to lives of purpose, integrity, and compassion. May we heed its call and let every resource entrusted to us become a conduit of freedom, a balm to the broken, and a beacon of God's relentless love. My friends, tonight I want to speak to the very core of your being, to the place where hope and possibility meet, and remind you that no matter the weight of your circumstances, change is not only possible, it is within your grasp. You may find yourself today staring down the barrel of bills that refuse to bend, of dreams that seem to recede with every passing sunrise, of burdens that press so heavily upon your chest that you hardly dare to breathe deeply lest the very air betray you. Yet even in the darkest night there springs a promise of dawn, a promise that the chains of poverty can be broken, that financial freedom can be seized, that a life once bound by lack can bloom into abundance. I know this because I have seen it with my own eyes. I have witnessed men and women who, against all odds, looked into the mirror of their own potential and decided, once and for all, that the story of their lives would not end in despair, but would instead be a testament to the power of perseverance, faith, and wise stewardship. Perhaps you have tried before to climb out of the pit, only to find loose rocks crumbling beneath your feet. You look upward and the ascent feels infinite. Your muscles burn, your spirit quails. You wonder if the very earth is conspiring to keep you in the valley of want. But understand this, every journey toward freedom begins with a single trembling step. It begins with the decision to say, enough. I will not settle for survival alone. I will reach for more. And that decision, fragile though it may feel in the first moments, is the spark that ignites the fire of transformation. It is the spark that tells your heart, I will not remain here. It is the voice that whispers, today I choose change. I have seen that spark grow into a flame in the life of a single mother who refused to let her children inherit her fear. She learned to track every penny, to budget with discipline, to put aside small sums each week until they swelled into a cushion that let her breathe again. With each deposit, her confidence grew. With each bill paid on time, her dignity was restored. She took odd jobs, asked for help when she needed it, refused to be shamed by her debt. And one day, she stood in a home she owned outright, keys in hand, tears in her eyes, proof that what once seemed impossible had been wrested from the jaws of impossibility by a heart set on change. If change is possible there, it can be possible for you. Perhaps you are a young graduate, diploma in hand, brimming with ideas, yet burdened by student loans that feel like shackles on your future. You gaze at the numbers on your statement with dread, wondering how you will ever get ahead. But remember this, those debts, though real, need not define you. They are a chapter, not your whole story. Begin by crafting a plan, seek counsel on refinancing, consider income-based repayment, weigh side gigs that harness your talents, and above all, refuse to let shame keep you silent. Each payment you make is a declaration, I am taking back my life. Each budget you follow is a proclamation, I am not a slave to rates and interest. With disciplined steps, you will find that the mountain of debt shrinks until it becomes a molehill, and freedom stands at the summit, waving you onward. Maybe you are an entrepreneur who has seen your dreams encounter roadblocks at every turn. You launched your business with hope in your heart and a plan in your head, but the first months brought more setbacks than sales, more expenses than earnings. You wonder if you were foolish to risk your savings, if the expense of pursuing your passion was too great. But hear me when I say this, every great enterprise faces its crucible. The stories you admire of meteoric success are rarely meteoric from the first moment. They are stories of perseverance, of pivots, of learning from mistakes, of staying power. When you face a dry spell, that is not the time to give up. It is the time to innovate, to sharpen your strategy, to ask hard questions of yourself and your model, to find new markets, new partners, new ways to serve. If change is possible for those who have climbed the highest peaks of industry, it is possible for you. And perhaps you are someone who has tasted modest success, but now stands on a plateau, comfort meeting complacency, progress slowed to a crawl. The very security that once brought you relief now feels like a cage, its walls too high to scale. In that place, change is possible, but it requires a fresh vision. You must ask yourself, what is my next horizon? What value can I add to my community, to my world, that stirs my spirit? How can I leverage what I have learned to mentor others, to invest in new ventures, to walk into new arenas of influence? Freedom thrives in motion, even humility, when paired with hope, can propel you beyond the plateau toward peaks yet unseen. Maybe you are a grandparent whose savings have been depleted by medical costs, by the need to care for loved ones, by the rising price of prescription drugs, by the unforeseen financial crises that attend aging. You watch your nest egg dwindle and wonder if your best days are behind you. But let me assure you, change does not belong only to the young. Wisdom, that precious gift you have accumulated over the years, can guide you to new sources of security, whether that be government programs you haven't yet claimed, community co-ops that reduce your expenses, volunteer opportunities that can open doors to stipends and benefits, or simply the joy of living more lightly with less, you are not forgotten on this journey. Change is still possible. You see, my friends, the story of change is as old as humanity itself. It is written in the pages of every heart that has dared to hope. It has been sung by the poet who rose from obscurity to inspire millions. It has been lived by the exile who built a new home in a strange land. It has been proclaimed by the prisoner who, with every small act of kindness and every inch of self-control, carved out a sanctuary of dignity behind bars. If change is possible for the pariah, for the broken-hearted, for the discouraged, it is available to you, here, now, in this very breath. I hear the questions rising in this room. You wonder if it will be easy. It will not. You wonder how long it will take. It varies. You wonder if you will have the strength. You will find that strength one step at a time. And you wonder if you are worthy. If you breathe, you are worthy. If you hope, you are equipped to begin. The road may wind and twist, but every mile walked in faith is a mile that brings change closer. Every choice to live within your means, to cultivate wisdom, to lean on community, to trust in possibilities beyond your vision, is a choice to invite transformation. Consider the small businessman who, when his shop's roof caved in after a storm, could have walked away, convinced that his dreams lay in ruins. Instead, he called his neighbors, asked for help, launched a fundraiser, and turned his scheme into a community project. Now his shop is not just a store, it is a symbol of resilience. His change was born not of solitary effort, but of courage to ask, and let me tell you, even that act of vulnerability was itself an element of change. If he could turn disaster into opportunity, you can turn your own crisis into momentum. I have stood on dusty roads in foreign countries where families share a single lantern's glow to read at night because electricity is too costly. They sit in the flickering light and dream of solar panels, of small businesses powered by alternating current, of radios that bring news and connection. They tell me that when they save enough pennies, they buy batteries, and with batteries they spark their first light. And in that simple act, they step out of darkness into illumination. Their change is a testament to the principle that freedom begins in the mind. Believe that change is possible, and then take the steps, even the smallest ones, that bring it into reality. Perhaps you've seen the community garden that blossomed in a vacant lot, where once there was only rubble and weeds. Neighbors pooled resources, seeds, tools, time, and together they turned dereliction into delight. Children learned about composting, elders shared stories over rows of tomatoes, and meals were cooked from fresh produce that cost nothing but labor and love. That garden stands as living proof that where there was nothing, there can be abundance, if hands join in common purpose. Change here was sown in soil, but the harvest was freedom. Freedom from food insecurity, freedom from despair, freedom to imagine new possibilities. And I know there are nights when hope feels like a distant star, when the pain of scarcity blurs the promise of a new day. But remember that even on the darkest nights, the stars are still there, unbowed by the void. They await only the clearing of clouds. So let your spirit be the sky, and let your hope be the star. Choose tonight to clear the clouds of doubt. Cast out the whispers that say you cannot, you will not, you are not enough. Those voices belong to the past, to the failures you endured, to the scars you carry. But they do not belong to your future. Your future belongs to the choices you make in this moment. So let us vow together, here and now, to choose hope over fear, possibility over paralysis, freedom over slavery. Let us lay down the burdens of yesterday, the regrets, the missteps, the what-ifs, and pick up the tools of tomorrow, planning, saving, investing, learning, giving, and trusting. Let us embrace the reality that no one of us stands alone in this quest. We are bound together by shared aspirations and a common destiny. When one of us takes a step forward, we all move closer to the vision of a world where freedom is not a luxury but a birthright. I see the faces before me, some marked by lines of struggle, some by the glow of excitement, all by the shimmering light of possibility. You have heard tonight that money buys freedom and poverty buys slavery. This is true, yes, but even truer is that freedom begins first in the human heart. Change begins when you believe it can begin. Change begins when you decide you will no longer be defined by your bank account but by your courage. Change begins when you recognize that the power to transform your life is already yours, tucked within your choices and your conviction. Let this moment be the turning point. Let the words I speak tonight sink deep into your soul and spark the first blaze of renewal. When you wake tomorrow, look in the mirror and find your own champion reflected back. Someone capable, someone determined, someone ready to step into the fullness of freedom. Write the first line of your new chapter with hope as your pen, with faith as your ink, with perseverance as your paper. Do not allow the blank page to intimidate you. Let it thrill you with its infinite possibilities. And so, as we stand at the threshold of tomorrow, know this: your change is possible. Not tomorrow, not next month, not some day today. Take that first step now, however small it may seem. Plant that seed of discipline in your budget, ask for guidance, reach out for support. Invest your time in learning, breathe deeply and declare, I will not remain here. Because every great journey begins with one step, and every step toward freedom is a step away from the slavery of scarcity. May your path rise before you now, lit by the unwavering conviction that change is not a distant dream but a present reality. My friends, tonight I invite you to lean in, to draw closer, to open not only your ears but the very chambers of your heart as we embark together on a journey of discovery. I ask you now to set aside every distraction, each worry that clamors for your attention, and to listen with an earnestness born of deep longing. Let us keep our hearts open, unclenched, and ready to receive the gentle whisper of truth. Let us keep our minds alive, attentive to every nuance, every invitation that stirs within, so that our spirits may respond with courage and clarity. Imagine for a moment that your heart is like a door to a room filled with possibility. As you stand before it, feel the warmth of expectation pressing gently against your chest. Will you turn the handle and step inside, or will you hesitate, letting fear hold you back? I urge you, do not let that moment pass in silence. Lean forward, feel the invitation resonate in your veins, urging you to engage with every fiber of your being. The power of this moment lies in your readiness to say yes to what your heart already yearns for. There is a rhythm to the act of invitation, a cadence that echoes in the tender spaces of our souls. It is not a clamor of demand, but a beckoning melody that draws us into greater intimacy with the divine purposes at work around us. Hear it now, the soft repetition of hope, the pulse of possibility, the refrain of welcome that calls us to stay curious, to stay engaged, to stay open. Let each refrain weave itself into the tapestry of your resolve, strengthening your willingness to step beyond familiar boundaries. Perhaps you feel a restless stirring within, a whisper that you have been meant for more than your daily routines. That whisper is invitation. It calls you to widen your gaze, to lift your eyes from the immediate, and to behold the vast vistas of purpose awaiting your embrace. Don't silence it, nurture it. Acknowledge that the greatest adventures of the heart begin when we dare to respond, when we give voice to the longings that tremble beneath the surface of our everyday lives. Listen to the cadence of your own breath and let it remind you that life itself is an unending invitation to love, to grow, to learn, to serve. Each inhale brings possibility. Each exhale releases what no longer serves you. Trust that rhythm, let it ground you. With every heartbeat you are invited into deeper awareness, deeper participation in the unfolding story of grace and transformation. Keep your heart open, for it is the gateway through which miracles may enter. Think of those moments when someone spoke to you with a sincerity that cut through layers of doubt, when encouragement awakened a part of you thought long dead. That is the power of invitation. A simple word, come, stay, believe, can light a fire in the soul. Tonight, let us become both recipients and bearers of that fire. Let us speak words that invite others into hope, that stoke the embers of courage, that fan the flames of conviction. Invite with your presence, with your empathy, with the authenticity of a heart that knows what it means to be welcomed. As you consider the journeys ahead, know that an open heart is the compass that will steer you through uncharted waters. When storms arise, and they will, you will find strength in the grace that invites you to persevere. When doubts assail your mind, you will hear the echo of promise inviting you back to courage. Keep that cadence alive within you. Invitation to resilience, invitation to trust, invitation to press on. Let those invitations become the refrain that steadies your step. In every encounter, whether with a stranger on the street, a colleague at work, or a loved one at home, carry within you the spirit of invitation. A gentle nod, a genuine question, a simple smile can open doors that might otherwise remain closed. Offer these tokens freely. Extend your hand and say, I see you, I hear you, come with me. Such is the power you hold when your heart remains open and your mind stays engaged. You become a channel of light in someone else's darkness. There may be times when your heart feels heavy, when skepticism creeps in, when the world seems to close in around you. In those moments, remember this. Invitation is not a one-time event, but a way of life. Even a wounded heart can extend a weary hand. Even a fatigued mind can ask a hopeful question. Let your weariness remind you of the grace that sustains. Let your doubts become the soil in which seeds of new faith might germinate. Keep inviting, keep asking, keep your spirit attuned to the next call. I speak to those who have doubted their own worthiness to be invited, who have felt the sting of rejection and the ache of exclusion. Hear me now, your worth is the soundtrack of eternity, and your invitation is written into the fabric of grace. Do not let past disappointments harden your heart. Allow the cadence of divine welcome to heal your wounds. Let each moment of invitation restore your dignity, and spur you to welcome others with the kindness you covet for yourself. Imagine a world where every heart beats in harmony with invitation, where doors are flung open rather than slammed shut, where minds are curious rather than closed, where spirits are generous rather than guarded. Such a world begins in the small choices we make every day, choosing empathy over judgment, choosing engagement over indifference, choosing love over fear. When we embrace the invitational cadence, we become architects of that world, brick by brick, breath by breath. Feel the gentle tug at your soul right now, urging you to keep your eyes lifted, to let your mind wander beyond the horizon of what you know. That tug is an invitation to vision, to dream, to expand your sense of what might be. Lean into it, let your imagination roam freely, for it is in these uncharted realms that inspiration often takes root. Do not stifle your creativity, let it dance to the rhythm of possibility, for every great innovation in history began with a heart open to invitation. Notice how inviting questions can transform a conversation. What dreams stir within you? How can I walk alongside you in this season? What hopes do you carry in secret? These queries, spoken with genuine curiosity, crack open fortress walls. They invite vulnerability, authenticity, connection. Practice asking them. Offer them not as mere words, but as living bridges to others' inner worlds. Your willingness to engage in such dialogue is itself an act of profound invitation. Consider the power of music, how a simple melody can invite us into profound emotion, into shared experience, into unity. Allow your life to become such a melody, a song of welcome and belonging. Let your actions harmonize with the tune of compassion and recognition. In doing so, you will create spaces where people feel safe to bring their whole selves. spaces where transformation begins. Keep playing that melody, one note at a time, and watch as others join in chorus. There is an art to invitation, not the flashy showmanship of a carnival barker, but the quiet confidence of one who believes in the goodness of life and the dignity of every individual. That art resides in gentleness and respect, in openness and sincerity. You do not coax or coerce, you simply extend your hand and say, "Come." Let your latchstring remain unbound, your table laid with the bread of welcome. Invite others not only into your company, but into the deeper feast of shared purpose and mutual discovery. When you feel the rhythm of indifference creeping in, when the demands of life threaten to shut your heart's door, pause and remember why you chose to remain open in the first place. Recall a time when someone believed in you, when you were the recipient of invitation rather than the gatekeeper of exclusion. Let that memory rekindle in you the fervor to pay that gift forward. Keep your mind engaged by reflecting on these moments, and let your heart respond by extending that same grace to others. We live in an age of noise and haste, where invitation can easily be drowned out by the clamor of our own agendas. Yet in the stillness beneath the noise lies the true cadence, the deeper invitation that calls us to slow down, to pay attention, to honor presence over productivity. Cultivate that stillness. Create pockets of silence in your day where you can listen for the soft sound of wisdom's call. In those quiet places, invitation rings truest, and your decision to answer becomes the catalyst for profound change. When you feel hesitant, when your mind whispers that you might be misunderstood or rejected, lean into the invitation anyway. Courage and fear often travel hand in hand, yet it is courage that transforms the invitation from abstract possibility into living reality. Breathe deeply, steadied by the knowledge that even if doors slam shut, your act of invitation remains a testament to your own integrity and hope. And sometimes, the very risk of reaching out becomes the turning point in someone else's story. Envision the ripple effects of a single act of invitation: a neighbor invited for coffee, a co-worker invited to share their ideas, a youth invited to join a community project. Those ripples extend far beyond the initial moment, touching lives we may never know. You are the spark that sets those ripples in motion. Do not underestimate the power of your simple yes. A yes to listen, to sit down beside someone in pain, to open your home, to open your heart. That yes carries weight beyond measure. Let us also remember to invite ourselves into deeper communion with the source of all invitation, to drink from wellsprings that never run dry. In prayer, in meditation, in silent reflection, we answer the primal call to enter into relationship with the one who invites us when we were yet far off. By staying engaged in that sacred dialogue, we find our own hearts swept up in the divine cadence, flowing out in words and deeds that echo eternity. Feel how the invitation to live with open hearts merges seamlessly with the call to remain curious. Keep asking questions of the world around you. What lessons lie hidden here? What grace is waiting to be revealed? Do not settle for surface understandings. Dive beneath the veneer of appearances and engage with the heartbeats beneath. In that depth of engagement, you will discover that every soul is a story worth listening to, every circumstance a text worth reading, every moment an invitation to awe. My friends, let the words of invitation linger on your lips and resonate in your spirit. Let them guide each step you take, each conversation you enter, each choice you make. Keep your hearts open, unguarded yet wise. Keep your minds engaged, alert but generous. Let us become a people defined by invitation, a people who do not wait for permission to love, to hope, to serve, to believe. And in the rhythm of our collective openness, we will find that the world itself becomes a grand unfolding symphony of welcome. My friends, imagine setting out at dawn on a road whose end you cannot yet see, a road that winds through valleys of uncertainty and over mountains of challenge. You stand at the threshold, your heart pounding with anticipation, the first light of possibility glimmering on the horizon. This path you embark upon is not a sprint but a pilgrim, Each step matters, each choice carried forward like a token of faith. You do not know how long the journey will last, nor the obstacles you will face, but you have made a decision. You will walk toward freedom. You have glimpsed what lies beyond the hardship, and you know that the fragile hope you carry must become the compass that guides you onward. When you choose to take that first step, you are saying yes to a journey of transformation. You are acknowledging that your story is not fixed, that poverty need not define you forever, that money, rightly managed, can become the vehicle of deliverance rather than the source of bondage. In that choice lies immense power. The power to change your circumstances, of course, but even more, the power to change yourself. For when you journey toward financial freedom, you are really journeying toward a larger version of who you were created to be, someone capable of stewardship, someone who can give as readily as they receive, someone whose life bears witness to hope made real. This journey will not unfold according to your timetable. There will be days when the pavement seems too rough, when every burden you carry presses more heavily against your resolve. You may stumble over unexpected expenses, falter in the face of disappointing returns, or feel the weariness of repeated effort. Yet each time you rise, each time you breathe and recommit to the road before you, you reinforce your own capacity for endurance. You learn that resilience is built stride by stride, that the very act of continuing in spite of difficulty transforms stumbling blocks into stepping stones. Think of the first time you learned to walk as a child. Each fall taught you something about balance. Each scraped knee was proof that your willingness to rise again mattered more than the momentary pain. So too in this journey, every financial misstep, every budget that fails, every emergency fund that proves insufficient becomes a lesson in balance, a chance to refine your plans, to strengthen your approach. You come to know that freedom is not achieved by perfection, but by persistence, by the steady accumulation of small victories that, when woven together, form the fabric of lasting change. Along the way, you will discover guides, mentors who have walked before you, whose voices echo with the encouragement you need in moments of doubt. Listen to their counsel as you would listen to a friend on a perilous trail. Trust their experience, learn from their mistakes, but also recognize that your journey is uniquely yours. What worked for others may require adaptation for your circumstances, yet the core truth remains: wisdom invited into action becomes power. And as you lean on others, let kindness mark your own steps, so that in turn you can become a guide for someone else, lighting the path where darkness once reigned. This pilgrimage is marked by milestones, times when you pause to look back and see how far you have come. The first milestone might be the day you open your eyes without dread at the sight of unopened bills. The next might be the first time you set aside a portion of your income into an emergency fund, and yet another when you clear a debt that once felt insurmountable. Celebrate these moments, for they are the markers of progress, proof that the road, though demanding, leads somewhere worthy of the effort. In celebrating, you fuel your own motivation and affirm the promise etched into every step, that freedom grows with every wise choice. But be alert to the temptations that lurk as shadows along the roadside. The siren call of instant gratification will beckon you to stray from the path, a buy now, pay later. It whispers, promising ease while delivering entanglement. The snare of comparison creeps in when you see others enjoying comforts you deny yourself, and you wonder if you are missing out on life's pleasures. Remember that these detours cost dearly. Each indulgence on credit binds chained moments into your future. Instead, let the promise of the pilgrimage call you back. A future unshackled, a life oriented toward generosity, a heart unburdened. Understand, too, that the terrain will shift. There will be seasons when the road is sunlit and dry, when markets are favorable and opportunities abundant. Other seasons will bring rain, mud, even snow, forces beyond your control that test your preparations. In the good seasons, sow generously, invest in ventures that grow, strengthen your savings, and build community with those around you. In the lean seasons, rely on the reserves you've built, practice gratitude for even modest blessings, and remember that rest is itself a gift, a time to reassess and to plan for the next phase of the journey. One of the most beautiful discoveries awaiting you is the compounding effect of discipline. Every dollar saved, every expense avoided, every act of giving or investment made with intention compounds over time. Compounding is not magical, it is simply the arithmetic of consistency. A single seed planted grows into a sapling. The sapling, if tended, becomes a tree whose roots spread wide and whose branches bear fruit year after year. In your own life, the seeds you plant today, budgeting, saving, investing, giving, will yield fruits that multiply into opportunities and blessings you cannot yet imagine. And make no mistake, this pilgrimage is not solely about numbers in a ledger. It is a quest of the heart, a spiritual journey that cultivates virtues often lost in the rush for wealth. Patience in waiting, generosity in giving, humility in receiving, gratitude in every circumstance. You will find that as your financial health improves, so does your capacity for empathy. You will stand in solidarity with those who struggle and offer assistance from a place of abundant compassion. You will learn that to give freely is not to lose but to gain something deeper, a sense of purpose, a legacy of impact, a community bound by shared hope. Each day on this road offers a fresh invitation. The morning light reminds you that yesterday's missteps are behind you and that today is another opportunity to move forward. The discipline you practice, tracking expenses, reviewing goals, steering clear of impulse purchases, is not a chore but a sacrament. It sanctifies the ordinary moments of life, transforming your daily routines into acts of worship. Worship of diligence, of wise stewardship, of the possibility that with each breath you forge a new reality. And even as you press on, remember that the destination remains an unfolding vision rather than a distant finish line. Freedom, in its truest sense, is not a static achievement but a way of living, a journey of continual growth and refinement. The mastery of budgeting, of debt elimination, of strategic giving, these are milestones, not in points. Beyond each summit lies another valley to cross, another ridge to climb, another vista of possibility to behold. Embrace this dynamic process, for it keeps your heart alive and your spirit hungry for what lies ahead. You will also find that the pilgrimage weaves together a tapestry of relationships. Family and friends become fellow travelers, sharing the load, celebrating victories, mourning losses. Communities of like-minded pilgrims form, offering accountability and encouragement. You discover that no one travels this path alone. Our steps are best measured in solidarity, in the communal heartbeat of shared purpose. Together, we encourage each other to face the steeper inclines, to share provisions when one falters, and to sing songs of hope around the campfires of common endeavor. As you proceed, let your vision expand beyond your immediate horizon. The pursuit of financial freedom equips you not only to lift yourself out of scarcity, but also to extend a hand to those still bound by poverty's chains. You see opportunities to invest in entrepreneurship, to support educational initiatives, to fund medical care, to spark community projects. In doing so, your journey becomes a journey of liberation not just for your own soul, but for countless others who will trace your footsteps toward hope. There will be moments when the pilgrimage seems interminable, when the road stretches out like an endless ribbon into the unknown. In those moments, pause to reaffirm your purpose. Remind yourself why you began this trek, not for selfish gain, but for the freedom to live generously, to love courageously, and to serve boldly. Let that higher why revive your spirit and quicken your stride. The path may be long, but you were never meant to carry your burdens alone. Look around and find hands reaching out, fellow pilgrims ready to walk by your side. At times you may question whether you possess the strength to continue. That is when faith becomes your companion. Faith is not a blind leap, but a steady conviction built on evidence gathered along the way. The debt you reduced, the savings you amassed, the smiles you brought to those you helped. These evidences form stepping stones across rivers of uncertainty, testifying that trust placed in disciplined action yields solid footing. Walk by those stones and let each one bolster your belief that the journey, though demanding, is achievable. Celebrate the anniversaries of your pilgrimage, the 1-year mark of budgeting faithfully, the day you cleared your first major debt, the month you hit your savings goal. In each anniversary, find reasons to give thanks to God, to mentors, to family, to your own perseverance. These celebrations are not merely festive pauses, but essential fuel for the road ahead. They remind you that progress is happening, even when the moment grind threatens to obscure the bigger picture. Allow your pilgrimage to shape not only your finances but your character. Courtesy, diligence, compassion, honesty, these virtues are the byproducts of walking a path of intentional stewardship. Each time you refuse impulse in favor of prudence, you train your will. Each time you share from your abundance, you cultivate a heart of generosity. Each time you choose a mentor over your own assumptions, you demonstrate humility. These qualities become your true treasure, carried with you even when external circumstances shift. The promise of this journey extends far beyond the years of trekking toward financial freedom. It reaches into the future, into the stories yet to be told by your children and grandchildren. They will inherit not only an estate of resources but a legacy of values, the lessons learned around the family table about living within one's means, the stories of resilience when hardship struck, the joy of generosity passed from one generation to the next. In this way, your pilgrimage becomes eternal, echoing long after your own journey reaches its horizon. Every pilgrim encounters moments when the road forks, when decisions must be made about which path to take. You might face choices between higher risk investments and more stable options, between pursuing a passion project or maintaining a steady income, between giving generously or saving for an uncertain tomorrow. In those critical moments, return to your guiding compass, the promise of journey. Ask not which choice offers the greatest immediate comfort, but which choice aligns with the vision of freedom you have embraced. Freedom marked by wisdom, by generosity, by steadfast progress. Let this pilgrimage shape your story in ways that extend into every sphere of your life, your relationships, your workplace, your worship. Demonstrate to colleagues what disciplined living can achieve. Show your spouse what partnership in stewardship looks like. Teach your children the rhythms of budgeting and giving. Model what it means to live generously when the world around you lessens its hand. In living out your journey publicly and transparently, you inspire others to consider their own path toward liberation. Above all, carry in your heart the unyielding knowledge that this pilgrimage, begun with a single courageous step, leads to freedom that is both tangible and transcendent. You will measure freedom in paid off debts, in growing savings, in investments that yield not only financial returns but social dividends. You will also experience freedom in relational richness, in the joy of serving others, in the clarity of purpose that grounds your every decision. This dual vision of freedom, earthly and eternal, imbues your journey with depth and grandeur beyond any material ledger. So keep moving forward, friends, with eyes cast toward the horizon, with feet anchored in the lessons of each passing mile, with spirits buoyed by shared encouragement. Embrace the promise of journey as the covenant that binds you to a future of liberation. Let every step you take affirm that your decision to begin this pilgrimage was not merely a momentary impulse, but the commencement of a noble quest. And as the road continues to unfold before you, may your heart remain ever open to the next invitation, your mind ever alert to fresh insights, and your soul ever ready to grasp the promise that true freedom always lies just beyond the bend,